Joy is talking to her best friend Carmen on the phone. While on call, Joy prepares dinner, pulling a tray from the oven. Carmen asks Joy where she is, but Joy cuts the call as Derek enters the house. Their dog waits for Derek to pay attention to him, but he seems somewhat tired and frustrated. He walks in and gets comfortable while Joy surprises him with dinner, describing the menu for the night. Derek is not amused, becoming frustrated with the notion of Joy having made dinner. He starts playing with his lighter, apparently something that causes Joy distress. With Derek becoming more frustrated, Joy finds herself at a loss for words, unable to respond to him in his current state of mind. Derek takes a seat and realizes that he is being unfair. Acknowledging his poor behavior, he asks Joy to sit on his lap and talks about how stressful his life is and how it is affecting his mood. Joy listens to him dutifully. Derek is uninterested in what she has to say, lust now taking over him, immediately grabbing onto her. The two then begin to indulge in lovemaking. As things get heated, Joy eventually becomes incapable of continuing. Derek looks at her as she apologizes, but her apology means little to him as he is disappointed. Joy apologizes again, but now Derek's anger management issues take over as the frustrated man pounces at Joy, strangling her into submission. Joy slowly loses her breath as Derek forces the air out of her until she loses consciousness. Loosening his grip, Joy seizes the opportunity to smack Derek in the face so she can escape. Realizing the woman was faking her losing consciousness, he rushes after her, but Joy is able to lock herself in a room. Derek demands she opens the door, simultaneously banging on it. Joy, fearing for her life, shouts back and refuses to comply. Suddenly, Derek moves away from the door, and a large thudding sound comes from the door. Joy realizes that Derek is now silent, so she inspects the situation in the living room. Derek threw their dog at the door, immediately ending the poor animal's life. Now the angry man changes his expression into one of regret, leaving behind Joy to stare at the tragedy before her. Some time passes, and Joy is now in another house with Carmen and her friend waiting for her outside. Tara and Carmen have been waiting for quite a while, preparing to set out for a road trip. Joy leaves the house with her bags and tosses them into the car's trunk. In a hurry, she makes her way inside, and Carmen prepares to set out. While the three sit in the car, Carmen makes conversation with Joy. Joy has spent 6 months without Derek, which Carmen decides to celebrate by sending her flowers in a vase. Joy is unamused by Carmen's cheery attitude, but still compliments the gift and appreciates the gesture. Carmen then asks about Joy's well-being, concerned, as she is wearing the same clothes she wore 2 days prior. Joy denies any issues, but Carmen is persistent that Joy is having a meltdown and needs to fix herself for their weekend retreat. The three are going on this trip to help deal with past trauma, which Joy believes will probably not help. Carmen mentions that they all had horrible experiences and must accept the help Dr. Dunley is offering them to help get over their trauma. Dr. Dunley seems responsible for assisting their therapy group, trying to get all her patients to move on from their horrid past. While Tara initially makes fun of the woman, she acknowledges Dr. Dunley's treatment as the real deal. Eventually, Joy accepts their testimony and agrees to put effort into moving past her trauma. They drive through the highway and into the wilderness. Their retreat is somewhere outdoors, spending the weekend camping together. As they go through the woods, Tara talks about specific rules around interacting with her. A hood up implies that she does not want to interact with anyone, and the opposite means that she is willing to talk. The three then eventually drive towards Little Deer Lake. This location for their camp is far off. They go by a destroyed car, not noticing it. This car adds to the ominous woods, already a place of uncertainty and danger. Joy gives Carmen directions as they go further into the wilderness. On their way, a man with a crossbow crosses their path. He and his partner approach the car, disclosing they are looking for his dog. The three, not knowing anything about the man's dog, cannot help him, so he lets them leave, informing them of his camp's location in case they need help. The three then joke about the man before driving away. On their way to the campsite, Joy seems shaken horribly by encountering the man with the crossbow. The mention of the dog reminds her of her experience with Derek, which still haunts her today. She needs this retreat to work, as her experience shakes her up, even in everyday situations. Eventually, the three reach the campsite, where Dr. Dunley performs funny-looking exercises on a girl named Shayna. Joy and Carmen mock the sight before them, but Tara explains it as a helpful exercise to relieve the body. As Tara leaves the car, Carmen talks to her friend, realizing that being out in the open like this probably makes her feel vulnerable. Ensuring she is safe, Carmen makes her way out of the car. Joy starts reassuring herself that she is safe, until Dr. Dunley walks to her car window to introduce herself. Dr. Dunley also insists that Joy refers to her by the doctor title, an assertion that feels like Dr. Dunley wants the group members to hold her in higher respect than the others. Moving on from this awkward conversation, the group is backpacking into the woods down a steep slope. They hesitate initially, but Dr. Dunley assures them they can make the journey. As the group enters the woods, Joy stares back at Dr. Dunley, who is creepily staring at them from above. As they walk through the woods, Shayna begins a conversation with Joy, pestering her into answering her inquiries about her reason for being there. Dr. Dunley eventually needs to interject as Joy becomes increasingly annoyed. Shayna understands, agreeing to share her trauma first. She is a veteran who experienced a lot on her tours in Afghanistan as a soldier. Having told her story, she prompts Joy to share her trauma. Joy decides to explain what happened with her and Derek, but Shayna seems to undermine her situation, even mocking her for being so heavily affected by her trauma. Shayna walks towards the front of the group as Joy stops and stares in disbelief. Shayna struggles with understanding people from their perspective. As the group continues, they find a trashed cell phone on the ground. They deduce that maybe someone has been taken out by a bear. The group is slightly uncomfortable with the possibility of bears inhabiting the woods, but Shayna pulls out bear spray as a preventative measure in case they face one. During all this, Joy suspects Dr. Dunley might have planted the broken cell phone, thinking it might be part of her treatment. Dr. Dunley gives a vague answer, as Joy admits the notion of bears invading the campsite scares her. Shayna, Tara, and Carmen make testimonies relevant to their issues. Dr. Dunley seems to be rewatching them with a stern look. The 3 testimonies show that each person struggles with not seeing any results from their efforts. Carmen especially feels like she cannot help her best friend, Joy, who has been there for her through thick and thin. Meanwhile, in the camp, Shayna is lying down, glossing over a picture of what looks to be her family. Joy and Carmen play around, while Tara carves a wooden figure and watches the 2 best friends enjoy each other's company. In her sleep, Joy dreams about blood filling a lake. Then she sees Derek during his fit from her traumatic experience, until the sequence ends with an image of an odd and bloody creature in the dark, waking up to the rest of the group preparing to move further into the wilderness. Joy struggles to get up, but eventually gets her things and prepares to leave. As the group recommences their journey further into the mountains, Joy feels someone is watching her. The rest of the group does not seem to feel that way, so she ignores it, thinking her trauma might be getting the best of her. The group walks on until Tara hears a buzzing sound. She then leads the group to a creek, where an odd stench has taken over the water. They look over the creek, realizing that the water is undrinkable, and they did not bring enough with them. Joy, now clearly worried, asks if they are certain there will be drinkable water at any point in their journey. Dr. Dunley reassures them that they will eventually find water. Shayna also mentions that there is another creek on their path. The group continues their journey together, until Dr. Dunley has them initiate a trust exercise. The group splits into pairs for this specific exercise. Joy is initially uncertain, but Carmen reassures her she will be safe, so Joy blindfolds herself and puts her faith in her best friend. Meanwhile, Tara is blindfolded and Shayna escorts her through the woods. As they traverse through the woods, Shayna keeps making a wailing sound, which annoys Tara. Despite Tara's repeated requests to stop, she keeps making the sound, eventually pushing Tara to take her blindfold off and abandon the experiment. Shayna only wanted to test Tara to see if she could identify the sound, but realizes that she may have made a mistake. Carmen and Joy are engaged in their exercise until Joy hears Derek's voice, frightening her into taking the blindfold off. Joy looks at Carmen, realizing that she is not reacting at all to hearing Derek in the woods. Thinking that something might be wrong with their retreat site, she rushes toward Dr. Dunley, furious about the uncertainty of where they are. Dr. Dunley reassures her that this is all part of the treatment, for the benefit of the group. Joy is still angry at the doctor, but Carmen escorts her away so the two can talk in private. Carmen confronts her best friend about why she is acting so odd. To her, Joy seems to be justifying her discomfort by blaming it on the danger of not knowing where they are, but she insists that something more is wrong with Joy. Finding out that Joy is hearing Derek's voice in the woods, Carmen blames it on her constantly reminding herself of her trauma. Hearing such an insensitive remark, Joy walks away in anger. Meanwhile, Tara seems to have disappeared. Tara is alone in the woods, pulling out her cigarette box to feed her nicotine craving. As she begins to light her cigarette, she notices someone through the trees and sees her hands covered in blood and bound by zip ties. Hallucinating, she turns away, bumping into Joy and startling herself. Tara seems to have seen someone, to which Joy also becomes even more paranoid. Tara admits to being delusional in the past, possibly explaining her current vision as another hallucination. She inspects her wrists, exposing markings where she imagines blood from her delusion. Joy shares her experience of hearing Derek, but Tara insists that nothing is wrong, then walks back to camp. The two traverse their way back, when Tara is suddenly alarmed by something before her. The group is inspecting the mutilated head of a deer, further inciting fear among some of the members. Dr. Dunley insists that everyone is safe, then prompts the group to stick together and make their way toward their next destination. The group keeps on moving as Tara talks to Dr. Dunley about something, and Joy stops as she hears the sound of Derek's lighter. Suddenly phasing out, she jumps back to reality after Carmen calls out to her. Joy then asks about Tara, but Carmen cannot share such a secret as it is not hers to share. They are now at the top of a steep and rocky slope. Joy looks down, annoyed, but eventually begins making her climb down. She still feels like she is being watched, but she follows the rest of the group anyway. The group is now in a narrow alley formed naturally in the terrain. They all feel the different stones, relishing in the textures, except for Joy. Joy begins to hear voices, clearly disgruntling her further and further. Eventually, Carmen calls out for her, and Joy looks around one last time to see if someone is actually watching them. The group takes a break together. Joy thinks about a past experience with Derek from some time after her incident with him. As everyone eats together, Joy talks to Dr. Dunley about their retreat. Dr. Dunley's biggest fear is inflicting harm upon her patients, so she assures them that her choice for this trip is safe. This part of the wilderness is apparently sacred, known for being a place for people to heal themselves. They believe that a spirit resides in the wilderness, one that heals in exchange for offerings. Eventually, the people abandon the spirit, leaving no knowledge of what may have happened to it. Shayna disrupts their conversation, as everyone needs to begin moving towards a flat surface nearby for setting up camp. Everyone sets out, Shayna helping the doctor up, leaving behind Joy and Carmen. Joy tries to reconcile with her best friend, asking her to keep her company while she has a wee. The two seem to be back to normal with each other, joking about and having fun. Eventually, Carmen's joking around prompts Joy to just tell her to go back to the group, so Joy is left alone, peeing in the woods. Meanwhile, Tara talks about what she experienced alone in the woods. Shayna tries to interject herself into their conversation, but Dr. Dunley shuts her down and sends her away. The two then talk more about Tara, who finds herself more at peace in the wilderness. Carmen is making her way back to the rest of the group, smiling about something as she does. Suddenly, she realizes that someone is watching her. Joy, now completely alone, feels someone nearby as well. Thinking that Carmen is trying to tease her, she looks around, only to find Carmen nowhere. Joy is now concerned that a stranger is nearby, becoming increasingly scared. She hears the sound of the lighter and her dog from behind her, but sees no one there. She keeps turning, until she eventually sees Derek in the woods. However, she is only hallucinating, as he disappears immediately after. These visions force her throat to close up, making her grasp for her neck. She is having a panic attack, but Carmen is able to get to her before the situation gets worse. She brings her back to the rest of the group, where they sit her down, and everyone helps the poor woman regain her composure. She tells her experience to the rest, to which even Tara adds having experienced something peculiar. Shayna now places some of their belongings in a bag, to ensure that bears cannot smell anything at night. Then Carmen starts a fire, for the rest of the group to huddle around for warmth on this cold evening. Dr. Dunley now starts talking to Joy. Joy does not like others talking about her situation, clearly, but she lets them share their thoughts and moves on. Everyone then gets ready to sleep for the night. Joy falls asleep and hallucinates Derek floating on top of her. This vision startles her immensely, forcing out a scream. Joy then decides to leave her tent, bringing her flashlight with her. She tries to call out Carmen, but hears no response, so she walks away from the tents to find answers. She keeps looking around, eventually getting startled by Tara and Carmen, who are collecting firewood. The three then sit by a campfire and share more about themselves. Tara used to go on camping trips with her family in the past, a knife in her hand being a memento from those days. The three then talk about why they are all awake. Joy shares more details about her nightmare, describing the shadowy man with rotting injuries hovering over her. Tara looks at Joy in disbelief, having had the same nightmare. The three realize that something peculiar is going on, so they decide to sleep together in the same tent. The morning starts with the sound of Shayna banging on pots to sound an alarm for everyone at camp. Joy wakes up and finds that Tara is missing, when suddenly Shayna's scream is heard from near the creek. The food they stored before is now gone, so the group starts panicking that they do not have the bare necessities that they will need for their survival. Dr. Dunley thinks it's a prank, so she deduces that Tara is having an episode and pranking the rest of the campers. The doctor leaves on her own, looking for their missing group member. She walks through the woods and starts hallucinating, like Tara and Joy. The group hears Dr. Dunley scream, in response to which Shayna immediately runs toward the source of the sound. Joy and Carmen run after her, and the three try to find Dr. Dunley. They see weird marks on trees, bear spray, and blood as they traverse through the woods. Further losing her composure, Shayna decides to keep pursuing Dr. Dunley. Carmen and Joy protest, but she moves forward anyway. Shayna climbs onto a rock with the bear spray in her hands when she suddenly sees food in front of her. She looks around and begins hallucinating. She starts imagining being back on the battlefield, melting down as she falls deeper into delusion. She crawls around, as if she is cowering away from gunfire, but the sight of other soldiers forces her to take a wrong stop and fall off a cliff. Joy and Carmen see Shayna as she trips over, making their way to inspect the ground near the cliff. They cannot spot her, so the two climb down to get a better look. They find more blood, a little smeared over the rock wall where Shayna fell down. Joy and Carmen cannot find her body, meaning that Shayna might have gone somewhere, so they walk away from the cliff until they find a cave. They climb inside the cave, finding more blood inside, deducing that the answer to all their questions might be inside. Carmen gets prepared to go inside the cave and possibly confront the creature responsible for the blood trail that they have been following. She equips a sharp wooden club and uses a lighter to light their way through the cave. Inside, they find Tara stuck inside a wooden cage. Freeing her, Tara is completely out of it, mentioning that someone else is also in the cave. Regardless of Tara's warning, Carmen's courage takes over as she searches for the others. She finds Dr. Dunley inside a shallow ditch, covered in blood and injured. Realizing that Dr. Dunley cannot move, she tries to make her way into the ditch when she starts hearing some noise, and a monster swipes the doctor away. Carmen is shaken up immensely at first, but she immediately moves away as the monster seems to now be in pursuit of her as well. The monster is right behind her as she commands that Joy and Tara both run away. Eventually, Carmen finds herself on her back, cowering away from this monster. Light shows her the appearance of this creature, a misshapen humanoid with blood dripping from its face. Outside, Joy inspects Tara's injuries. Tara is completely covered in blood, and the monster seems to have dug into her torso as well. Carmen reaches the cave entrance, eventually needing to jump. She takes a leap of faith, falling feet first into the water. She has a foot injury that is bleeding, turning the water around her red as she tries to swim toward shore. Eventually, she is able to swim away from the cave and sees Tara and Joy standing together. She feels relief and waves to the two in front of her, prompting them to make their way over. However, her relief quickly turns into fear as the monster walks through the woods behind Joy and Tara. The two move as quickly as they can toward Carmen, as their next plan of action is to move into the water. The three make it in and find another wooden cage inside the lake. They swim over to the cage, taking shelter inside and praying that the monster does not find them. They wait inside until the monster suddenly appears over them, but they are safe from the monster's clutches. Eventually, it gives up and lets the three regain their composure. The cage is not the ideal place to be, with two injured people bleeding out. Tara realizes that she will not last long, and she does not want her life to end inside a cage. Realizing what she might try to do, Carmen and Joy make little effort to stop her, so Tara goes outside and offers herself up to the monster so that the other two can escape. The monster seems to have disappeared into the cave again, so the two climb out of the water and inspect Carmen's wound. She is bleeding profusely, so the two need to handle her injuries before dealing with the creature. They both make it back to the tent where the group's first aid kit is placed. They begin a painful procedure to mend Carmen's wound, first by cleaning it with alcohol, and then stitching it up. At the moment, Joy then decides to disclose some important information to her best friend, realizing that this might be the last time the two ever talked to each other. Joy saw Derek the night before their retreat. She led him into her house the night prior, begging her to talk to him. The two made love following her letting him into the house, a mistake that she admitted the next morning. She then had to leave, sending Derek off and offering him no chance at reconciliation. Derek decided to take the violent approach, but Joy made that choice before him, immediately smashing him in the head with a vase and leaving him unconscious on the ground. Tara hears this and decides that she be clear to her best friend that Joy's lack of concern for herself puts their friendship at risk. Joy hears her out, but feels betrayed by Carmen, despite there being truth in her words. Outside, the sun is gone, so the two leave the tent slowly, trying to see if the monster is nearby. Joy makes her way out of the tent first, scouting the area before letting Carmen out. As Carmen climbs out of the tent, Joy sees the creature looming over her. Stunned, she is unable to react as the monster immediately drags Carmen and the entire tent along with him. Joy tries chasing after Carmen, as she screams in the grasp of the monster. Realizing that her pursuit of this creature is pointless, she decides to take a different approach. She packs her things and calms down, eventually preparing to do the unthinkable and go back to the cave. She reaches the cave and starts to make her way through to find her best friend. She is careful not to make any noise that could alarm the creature. She eventually has to climb down a wall, a difficult task given that she cannot make any sound. As she climbs down, she notices bones that belong to a human, shaking her up slightly. After reaching the bottom, she inspects the area around her, and then re-examines the bones in front of her. A narrow path reveals itself inside the wall, with the sound of Carmen's cries echoing through. Without hesitation, Joy decides to make her way to the other side to save her best friend. As she crawls through the narrow cave, her back brushes against the roof of the tunnel, while blood, organs, and bones are smeared across the walls and floor. She crawls through to eventually find Shayna's head, a sight that startles her into breathing heavily. She realizes that she has a job to do, forcing herself to move forward toward the sound of her friend. Joy eventually reaches the end of the narrow path through the wall. The tunnel leads into another room, where the monster is standing in front of a cage with Carmen inside. Joy gets up, and her hallucination starts again. She sees the monster as Derek, slowly walking towards it and holding it in her arms. She apologizes to her hallucinated version of Derek, then pulls out a pocket knife and immediately stabs the monster. The monster loses control over itself for a moment, screaming and struggling as it tries to collect itself from the stab wound. Joy uses the opportunity to spray the monster with bear spray, further sending the monster into confusion. She then frees Carmen and helps her into the tunnel, pulling out a lighter to finish the job. The same sound of the lighter that scared her in the past is now her weapon of choice to end this nightmare. She lights a flame and tosses it at the creature, which catches fire and burns away. Carmen and Joy then make their way out of the cave. Carmen's injury makes the journey home tricky, but the two travel back through the terrain together. The blood-covered duo finally makes it back to Carmen's car, ready to leave their new traumatic experience behind them and head back to modern-day society.